Right, over to Geoff. So, Geoff, what got you into climate?
Well, I was a science teacher. Before I retired in 2007, climate change was on my syllabus. I knew it was important, but campaigning hadn't occurred to me. A year after I retired, our daughter got arrested for stopping a coal train delivering to Drax power station. Well, I was angry and shocked. How dare you take the law into your own hands, daughter? Our democracy is fragile. Why throw away your opportunities for a great career? But Dad, haven't you heard of climate change? Excuse me, I'm a science teacher. But Dad, it's urgent. Well, she had an article in The Guardian that said, we don't have 30 years. The scientific consensus is Earth will warm by 2 degrees, then 3, 4. It's about a planet largely uninhabitable. I thought she was exaggerating because that wasn't clearly put in my modern A-level textbook. So I did my own research using the Met Office, Royal Society, NASA, the World Meteorological Organization, and the science was absolutely clear. Sorry, daughter, you were right.
So, situation, but there's not much action on CO2 emissions. How do you feel about that, Geoff?
Well, I was alerted by Professor Robert White, a Christian guy, professor of geophysics at Cambridge, who in his book writes, there's been a targeted process of denial and misinformation backed by millions of dollars and instigated by industries with vested interests. And another Christian, Nobel Prize winner, Sir John Houghton, who worked with Mrs. Thatcher to set up one of the world's leading climate research centres and was a chair for the IPCC, he writes in his autobiography how he refused to shake the hand of one of the delegates in the IPCC. Why would a lovely Christian gentleman to do that? Because the delegate was deliberately obscuring the science. So the penny dropped for me. Science is serious and real, but there's so much disinformation out there.
So what was your next step then?
We joined Transition Lincoln. We found them to be brilliant as a supportive group, doing lots of very positive things in the community. We tried to engage with our MP and got nowhere, but I did feel that we needed to do a lot more politically. People who wanted to do the right thing had so many barriers in their way.
Well, earlier I introduced you as a self-appointed agitator. How did that happen and what does it mean?
Well, I just got on with doing stuff. I figured that the community I identified with most clearly would be my church, so that's where I began. I thought they'd accept the science. I tried to persuade my vicar to use eco-church, and I wrote to my bishop. I thought they'd understand it was a gospel and a justice issue, but I didn't get anywhere. We were very much encouraged by the work of Christian Aid and Tear Fund and our Rocha and Green Christian, so we just kept going. In 2015, a group of us had the chance to meet one of our bishops. He was welcoming and supportive, but too busy to keep going with us. So our little Faith and Environment group organised a conference. We had 20 attenders. We got lots more contact that way. And in the next 2 or 3 years, we organised more annual conferences and other events. In 2016, Christian Aid and Tear Fund invited my wife and I to be part of a mentoring project, and they encouraged us to engage purposefully with influential individuals in our community. So we kept on it. In 2016, our bishop went to a conference in Fiji and had an epiphany. He met a climate scientist. He met people who were suffering the realities of climate change. And he wrote on the diocesan website, "Now I understand with my heart, we've got to play our part in reducing global warming." So that gave me another chance to engage with our bishop, and our little group was reconvened. We've now got a diocesan environmental advisory panel and a diocesan policy. The bishop then organised with the University of Lincoln a big international conference, Moana, in 2019 with climate change experts speaking. So armed with the outcomes of that conference, I went lobbying my representatives to the C of E General Synod. And then, of course, in 2020, they agreed a target of 2030 for net zero. So I'm hoping that that target is going to help the church to take seriously climate change and to engage politically.
It's definitely some. Hopefully, we don't need every bishop to fly off to Fiji to get their climate epiphany. So you also joined Extinction Rebellion. Why did you do that?
I did that. We initially felt very ambivalent about it, or I did. But then the IPCC report came out in 2018, and the biodiversity report came out a year later, and we saw Rowan Williams' letter in the paper supporting Extinction Rebellion, so we decided to take a look. In Extinction Rebellion in Lincoln, we met lovely people who'd been active in the Wildlife Trust, in Transition Lincoln and other groups for a long time. And they understood the urgency of it and the need to change. And I was impressed by their commitment to peaceful, direct action. So we took part in Extinction Rebellion rebellions in London, engaging with the public, and contrary to what you might read in the press, had a lot of very positive responses, even thanks on the street. We discovered climate action, and then, as you know, by 2019 Parliament declared a climate emergency, and we had a National Citizens Assembly set up. So I counted that a success.
Indeed. You haven't just been doing that protest stuff and the church stuff. You've also been engaging with politics, both at a local level and with your MP. So how did that happen, and what was?
Well, I'm a Labour Party member, so I agitated in the Labour Party. They let me do presentation about climate change and asked me back to do another one to say what would Lincoln look like as a sustainable city. And I think that helped in what happened later in the city. In 2017, we had a new MP. So our transition group organised a public meeting in support of Climate Coalition Speak Up campaign, and we invited our new MP. She came and was keen to learn. And then shortly after, she was talking about climate change in Parliament. I counted that as a great success. But she also told us in that meeting that we organised, Lincoln needs an environment task force. And I planted that thought in my head and thought we'll use that later. And then another little coincidence, a local church, a church group in the city with a passion for climate justice organised a prayer breakfast and invited civic leaders to come and talk about the challenges they face. The city council leader said, their priority is climate change. You could have knocked me over with a feather. I'd been hoping for that sort of opening. So off I went and met the council leader. And he said to me, you're going to tell me to put your money where your mouth is, aren't you? I thought, well, maybe. So I asked him, would he support me to take a group of people from Lincoln to Leeds to meet people who led the Leeds Climate Commission with a view to setting up a similar commission in Lincoln? And his answer was yes. That process began. So 6 months later, I went back to the council leader and said, we've now got the beginnings of a climate commission, engaging with major employers in the town, with the university, with all sectors in the city. Would he now consider acknowledging a climate emergency for the council? So on the council website, we've now got the declaration that I helped to draft.
Excellent, that's good. And so based on your experience then, how would you advise people to act? You've tried a range of different things. What's the way forward for people?
I don't think there's a magic answer. I think all forms of action count. Writing to your MP is not difficult, and there are lots of ways to get help for that. We've heard from Rachel about that. I think we need to get ourselves informed and help others to get informed. We need to grasp how urgent the situation is and how rapidly we need to cut our emissions. Personal lifestyle is urgently important, but I think we need to acknowledge that all of us doing our little bit is definitely not sufficient to meet the UN's 1.5 degree target. We do need political change. So we need to talk about it, and we need to show there's a much better way of living. We need to connect with nature. We need to connect with our community, because we're going to need strong communities in the things that are going to face us. We need to join with others to get encouragement and support in our own lifestyle changes and political action. And we need to try to engage with potential movers and shakers in our own sphere of contact with a view to specific action. So we have to focus on what we want to achieve. And my eye is, and I think our eye should be on COP26. And in connection with that, I think the church needs to give massive support to the CEE bill. We mustn't give up.
Thank you, Geoff. It's inspiring to hear how much change you've created. If we had someone doing that in every town and city across the UK, we'd be making some progress.